So we are on the dot, and we have a lot of people who joined us on the attendees as well. I want to invite Lindy for joining, for being a co-host as part of this webinar. This webinar talks about the agile leadership in crisis mode. What a leader needs to do during crisis. And for us to understand about the leader's roles and responsibilities, we also need to look at what is a crisis? How do you define a crisis? And there's some interesting content, and there is some takeaways for you as well. And Lindy, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Lindy Kretzinger and I am based in South Africa. I am one of the Agile consultant trainers for Leadership Tribe, and my background is leadership, and I look forward to spend the next hour with you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Lindy. So on that note, Lindy is driving the PPT, so I am going to follow her for the next few minutes, and after that, I'll be handing it over to Lindy. So moving on. So I'm an enterprise coach and a trainer for Leadership Tribe. Of course, I work very closely with Lindy, who lives miles away from me. And on and thanks to COVID in a way, we were able to meet virtually and we started working. And from there, so many things have kicked off. She works very closely with some of our clients, and we work on day-to-day basis. And what we learn working with the clients, we are bringing it back to the people so we can share, give it something back to the community as well. That's what we are doing. We are giving back to the community. And there's if you have any questions, you can reach us directly on hello@leadershiptribe.com, or you can drop a note to either of us on LinkedIn or any of various other platforms we have as well. So a little bit about the Leadership Tribe. Um, Leadership Tribe started as, oh, sorry, the Zoom manifesto. We do have, if you can click on your cameras, that'll be amazing. We can see you all. And there will be times where we'll switch on the audio for everyone. So if you feel that if you have, it's an opportunity for you to talk, feel free to talk, or you can type it in the chat window as well. We have a Q&A section, so you can ask your questions. And sometimes if you have any notes or comments, you can put it in the chat window and we'll be more than happy to support it. If Lindy is talking, I'm monitoring it. If I'm talking, Lindy is monitoring the chat as well as the Q&A. So we are here to support you in either way. So a little bit about Leadership Tribe. Leadership Tribe is an agile consulting training organization. We work with various organizations, from a startup, a simple startup with 2 to 3 people, to organizations where you work with 350,000 to 600,000 people as well. Some of the things what we do is we train people, we help organizations with the transformation, bringing some sort of a change in. If there's a change, why do we need to bring that change in? Why now? These are the things we help organizations with, and help them to get better with respect to the business mastery, with respect to bringing in innovative products for the organizations and how to deliver them and how to make the changes sustainable as well. And as a tribe, it's a tribe of like-minded people, tribe of like-minded coaches, tribe of like-minded leaders coming together and saying, what can we do to make a world a better place than what it was before? As leaders, you do play an important role, a very important role. And we will try to find out during this webinar as well. And we'll be more than happy to take your questions. So moving on, this is the high-level overview of the agenda. What do you mean by crisis? There is an element of what VUCA relates. What do you mean by VUCA, and how does it relate to COVID-19? And we are using it as a case study, as an example, to teach you some of the topics what we have. And the fascinating part for me is, with all the things which is happening, what are the type of leadership styles you need to have? And Lindy has created an amazing work. I can't wait to see it myself with you. So I'm excited about it. And what are the different models of change? We will be talking about those as well. So over to Lindy.
Thank you very much, Krishna. So in the chat box, if you could just type in, what do we mean when we talk about crisis? So what do we mean by crisis? if I could just have a few people responding. Let's just have a look at the chat box. So if we talk about crisis, what do we mean, and what does it mean for you where you are right now? Difficult times, yes, Chitra, thank you. Yes, but a lot of bad things has happened, confusion, okay, and it's also happened quite suddenly. It's things that we have not planned for, absolutely. We have not planned for any of this. And we are also put into situations where we need to respond. Okay. Okay, and also there's a big change. Thank you very much, Yorkie. So there is a lot happening at the moment, and the reason why we've put this webinar together for you is that we really wanted you to think, where are you at the moment in this process, and where can you anticipate going forward in a changing landscape? Genevieve, experiencing sudden change and our response to it, yes, we're going to look at that as well. And it's very overwhelming for all of us. I don't think there's one person in this planet that has not been affected by COVID-19. I actually personally don't know of one person. So during this session, what we're going to look at is we're going to take you through this process. We're also going to look at how does humans actually react to crisis, and what can we do as leaders? What is our next steps? Before we go into it, just a little bit of data. And this data is positive, and it's also not really here to make you any negative, but we'll also show you what is the positive side of COVID-19. So in Fortune 500 companies, 52% of them, based on a Harvard Business Review, disappeared since the year 2000. So this is the statistics, and the reason was because of bankruptcy, because they were acquired, or because they just did not exist anymore due to digital disruption. And as we're having this webinar and this conversation, we know that there are many, many companies that are disappearing at the moment. So what is the positive side of the coronavirus pandemic? And that's what we're going to look at. And recently there was actually a panel of CEOs that commented on what their businesses are doing. And they actually said that they are putting purpose at the front of their recovery plans. So instead of actually focusing on just meeting the bottom line, they are now focusing on things that are much bigger and much more important. And that is climate change, sustainability of the organization, and in particular, this was very interesting to me, empathy and transparent communication. So these were the 4 areas, and you can also copy the link and click on it and read more about it. But this came out of an interview with many CEOs across the globe. And therefore, the COVID-19 is also a positive. It's also positive. So why do people and organizations change? So just quickly in the chat box, if you could just write down, why do you think people and organizations change? Okay, so sometimes change is needed. Okay, we need to survive, we need to evolve. Yes, that needs to happen. Yes, trauma or stakeholders, shareholders drive it. Okay, it does create a lot of trauma as well. And sometimes change also needs to happen. Okay. Okay, when there is a crisis, people need to respond to it. Yes, so there's also going to be a response to it. If we have a stimulus, we're going to have a response. And we also need to sometimes change our strategy. Thank you very much. So these are the different reasons why people and organizations change. Okay, buffer planning, thank you, Hari. No strong assumptions. Buffer planning to strategy, yes. Survival of the fittest, okay, that's interesting. Okay, and how do we actually react and cope with the change? So we're going to look at that as well. Thank you very much for your responses. So there are three reasons why people change, and I found this very, very interesting as well when I learned about it. And the first is that people change because of crisis. Okay, so where we are now, we're definitely going to change. Every person on this planet is going to change because of what is happening. At the moment, we also don't know if we're even going to celebrate Christmas with our family. We're not sure when a new vaccine is going to get to the market. So there is a lot of uncertainty. And therefore, how we react is we are reacting reactive, which means that we are just reacting to our environment. And we actually are not feeling that we are in control of anything at the moment. And this also, secondly, leads to feel that we are threatened. So when we are threatened, it also means that we actually might not exist, our companies might not exist. And there's a lot of threats that we experience as humans on this planet at the moment. And then that leads to being proactive, which means that it also creates opportunity for us. So I'm not sure about you, but this changed my life because I was just training in South Africa, and all of a sudden I had to go out on the internet and just look for opportunities. And at the moment, I'm actually talking to people across the globe, from Hong Kong to New York to India, which for me is absolutely amazing. It's an opportunity for me. So you can see how this has changed my life. So again, it's very important that we are aware when we are leaders that this is the process. So we have crisis where people are reactive, they feel threatened, and then we move into opportunity of being proactive, which means that we take control of our behavior. And we actually start to focus on the things that we can influence versus the things that we cannot influence. And that is the difference between leadership as well. So I'm not going to go into detail of the Agile Manifesto. For those people that are familiar with Agile, you'll know that these are the 4 important values. But what I want to focus on is the 4th value, which is really responding to change over following a plan. And what does it mean here? It means that we really need to be agile. We need to respond to change. And we really need to be flexible enough. How many here, and you can maybe just raise your hand, has actually adopted one change because of the difference that has happened in your life? If anybody can maybe raise their hand. Thank you. Okay. So there has been many people that has actually gone into the proactive mode and made one change. For example, some people actually created stronger relationships with their family, or they started learning about a new industry, or perhaps they enrolled for a new program, or just attend a webinar like what you are doing right now to expand your knowledge and to enrich yourself. So therefore, this is where we want to be. We want to really start to influence the things that we can control, which is our own behavior, which is our own attitude, and also our own thoughts. So let's just quickly look at a VUCA world. So I'm sure you've heard about the VUCA world. And this was basically cited in the American Army. And it was quite a while ago. If you have a look at it there, you'll see that it consists out of 4 areas, which means that it's volatile. So when a world is volatile, it is also changing at a very fast rate. And we know now that technology is actually changing as we speak as well. If we think about the virtual platforms and the software that has just um, been used in the last 8 months. Also, it creates uncertainty. So when we are unclear about the present, it's also not very easy for us to actually predict the future. For example, we don't really know if a vaccine is going to be on the market. So therefore, we don't know how long we're going to be in this state. Complexity, again, there's multiple key decision factors that is creating a complex environment. If we know about countries, different countries react differently because of our social, economic, political environment, and therefore it makes it more complex. Ambiguity is also the lack of clarity. So if we have a look at lack of clarity, it means that we also are not really able to analyze what is going to happen. And therefore, the VUCA world, and as so many years ago it's actually being created, is where we are living in at the moment, and so relevant to Agile leadership. So we're going to just dive a little bit deeper into leadership styles. So leadership styles are very relevant here because this is what we're really talking about. So how do we lead in a VUCA world? And what do we actually do to be able to have an influence and to have an impact in people's lives? So if we have a look at leadership styles, we have a variety of leadership styles, as we all know. But where we want to be is we want to use a range of these leadership styles, depending on the circumstances, also depending on the environment. And this is your choice as an Agile leader, where you need to decide which leadership style is really going to help. And we also focus on servant leadership, which is really about the growth of people and also their well-being as well. So perhaps you've heard of a new age leader, and I personally love this because this really defines leadership. And it's basically consists of all these elements. But what it really is about is that we need to be change-ready individuals, and we need to embrace and lead change in our private personal lives as well as in our workspace. We also need to understand the process of change. So what does change do to people? How does it actually affect people? And we need to become skilled at inspiring people to embrace and advocate change. So this is the future of leadership. So just to summarize, so if we look at the different leadership styles, we also need to play a certain role. So say, for instance, we say, yes, I am an Agile leader. What role are you going to play during this pandemic? Are you going to be an expert where you're going to be tactical and you're going to have problem-solving orientation? Or are you going to focus on strategic outcomes as an achiever? Or are you actually going to be a catalyst of change where you're going to be the visionary, where you're going to facilitate and inspire people? So this is really about you, because change really starts with you. Change starts with yourself, and then with your team, and then with your organization. So there's going to be some time for you as well during this webinar to actually think about your goals for 2021 and to think, where do you want to be as a leader? And it could be in your private personal space as well as in your workspace. Do you want to be an expert, an achiever, or a catalyst? So before I hand over to Krishna, I just want to also expose you to this framework which we teach. And this is the different hats that an Agile coach need to wear. And again, this was really interesting to me because I come from a peer coaching facilitation environment, but During this process, I also learned that an agile coach needs to be able to teach. They need to be able to actually teach people skills to cope with change. And they need to teach them about the process of change and how does it work. They also need to have technical mastery, business mastery, transformation mastery, and then, as we also know, mentoring, which is a very important role as well. As part of being a lean practitioner, it starts with our mindset. So we need to have a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. We need to be able to influence people, and we also need to know the principles of Agile and Lean. So I'm going to hand you over to Krishna, who's going to now take you further into these frameworks that is going to help you to embrace change. Okay, so thank you very much, and thanks to you. Over to you, Krishna.
Thank you, Lindy. We are not done yet because me and Lindy have designed it in such a way that we'll be bouncing off each other and we'll be asking some questions together as well. So when you talk about bringing change in the chat window, write one thing: why do people change? Of course, you talked about the crisis, you talked about a threat, an opportunity, but here, if you want to make a change, why do you change? Type it in the chat window, please. Why do you change? Forget about your teams. Why do you need to change? Okay, we got continuous improvement, to be better, to get better, improve, improve self, improve. You want to improve from whatever you're doing to better version of you. Okay, change for a better world. Yes, agreed. So to bring change in, you need to understand that human beings do not change for the sake of change. There's always an underlying reason why people do. And there are some amazing concepts out there about change. If you do look at the next slide, it talks about the different types of change. Organizations, there are models out there where you can use the entire organization end to end to see where do you fit in and how this change is going to help you as an individual wise as well as from an organization point of view. There are multiple models out there. I'm not going to go into everything in detail. The Cotta's 8 steps, you got the appreciative inquiry, the Adka change model, the Darrell, Connor, William Bridges. There are amazing change models out there. But for this webinar, I'm going to stick to one change model, which is my favorite. I love it. And it's quite simple to remember. It's called ADKA. This is a goal-oriented management model. It's tons of content, tons of literature out there when it talks about ADKA. It's called From the Prosy. It's an amazing website. Have a look at it. It breaks it down, ADKA, into 5 different steps. And each step needs to be done before you can move on. The first step, A, stands for the awareness. Why are we changing? Why do we need to change in the first place? So from the information you got from Lindy, whether we are in a crisis mode, whether it's a threat for us if we don't change, or if it's an opportunity, that kind of an information has to be given by the leadership team in the organizations. Why the need for change? So the next thing is, internally, you heard about the change. From the desire is, what does it take from my personal interest to get involved in the change? So as individuals, we all know who do we work for. We all know why do we do it. In the chat window, who do you really, really work for in an organization? Type it in the chat window. Do you work for yourself or do you work for the organization? Type it in the chat window. Do you work for yourself or organization? So you got self, both, customer, end user, myself, both, organization, self, and organization. Okay, both. What if your organization turns around and says, my lovely employees, from today onwards, for the next 1 year, we can't pay you money. We can't pay you salaries. I'm sorry. Would you work for the organization? Thank you very much. You start from home. You work for yourself. Of course, you work your asses off. You work 9 to 5 p.m. Some people even work for 12 hours a day. I know some people who work for 14 to 16 hours a day. Why do they work so hard? Because end of the day, they want a job satisfaction. They also want to make sure they are supporting the loved ones at home. You do it for yourself. You do it for yourself. Then the organization, then everything comes into play. Exactly. So, what is the desire? Why do you need to change? From this is completely internal. From an employee's perspective, what is the desire in them which will make them change? As leaders, you need to reach out to the employees' self-interest. What will help them to change? That's the desire. You're reaching out to the desire of the employees and making and showing it to them that them doing this step will help them to achieve Y or X or Z. So what is in it for them? It's not about what is in it for me, it's what is in it for them. If you're able to explain to them what is in it for them, that things get much easier. As an organization, why do we change? Why do we need to change? We explain to that. By doing this change, what is in it for them? That's the desire. So now you got the desire, employees on board. Now you need to provide them the knowledge on how to change. This means as a leader, you might need to train employees on the new way of working. You might need to train employees on the new tools or new systems or the new process, or you might need to train employees on value stream mapping. There are different things out there to bring this change. You might need to provide them the knowledge on how to change. Once they have the knowledge, now these employees are actually looking at, I'm going to do this. So I know why we are changing. I know what is in it for me to change. I got the knowledge. It's the ability to make the change. That means that when they are doing things, leaders need to be as coaches. You need to support them during the change. Sometimes when you do it for the first time, is everything perfect for the first time? Things do screw up. It's okay when things screw up. When things screw up, you retrospectively learn to say, how can I make it better? This is where the coaches and leaders are working with the employees to improve the ability so they can demonstrate the skills and the behaviors, what they're bringing the change in. That's the ability. Leaders play an important role. And the last part is the reinforcement. This is where you're providing them the data and and showing them previously when we wanted to do the change, this is what we were doing. Now, this is what we are doing. Look at the data, how we have improved. So if you want to, you cannot do any change without measuring. You need to measure the change. And what kind of data metrics do we need to change and measure? Work with your teams, with your employees, and find out what kind of metrics will help us to get better. What kind of metrics can we measure to make us better? Those are the metrics we are talking about. And making sure the change sticks. Change sticks. This is an interesting topic. Why does need to consider changes when change happens, it should stick? Why is it very important? Let me ask you this thing. As leaders, coaches, you work with your organizations, you try to bring the change in, the change is happening. Suddenly, something happens. Something happens. Things go wrong. What would employees do? From our research, we have seen that when shit hits the roof, people always fall back to the things which they were quite comfortable with. Things which they are quite comfortable with, their behaviors, the tools, the systems. It's too hard work. I will go use an Excel to compile this data. It's that kind of a support you need to provide. So change is hard. Change is hard. And to make the change sustainable, to make it stick, reinforcing, showing them the live data of how they are progressing and how it's helping them as well. It's a great tool for me because it looks at the individual side and the organization side. There's an amazing document which we give in one of our training programs. If you want to learn and how to use as a self-assessment tool, this ADKA change model, drop a note to hello@Leadership Tribe and we will forward that to you. Or maybe we will send it out as a post-webinar document. We will look into it, depends on the amount of people are asking for it. So moving on. So when you're trying to bring change in, so change as an exception or change as a norm, because something happened, we need to do a change. That's quite reactive. And proactive is before things happen, can we be proactive? Change as a norm. So we talk about innovation, we talk about teams need to be empowered as leadership. One of the key things is successful teams are innovative. Successful teams are are self-empowered to make things happen. It's all good in theory. In reality, as leaders, you need to create an environment, a psychological safe environment where teams can actually experiment and try new things and asking themselves one question: what are the things we can do to make it better? So if you're waiting for change to happen, you will keep on waiting. But if you're able to create a norm in the organizations, we are all constantly going to improve and see how we're going to get better. The beautiful thing of using Agile or Scrum, it's there are some practices. There are some practices which helps us to improve our behaviors. For example, retrospectives. I don't know how many of you do retrospectives. It's a great facilitating tool to look back in the past and asking us one question: how do we get better? You're looking at the people, the process, the product, the environment, and asking one question: how do we get better? So for that, it's a change is a norm. In everything they do, they're adapting and improving. That's a For you to survive, you need to adapt. You need to adapt. COVID or no COVID, keep on adapting and change becomes a norm. And this kind of a change should be an organizational change process. Innovative organizations, they tend to do much better. In the chat window, think of an organization which you think is doing amazingly well. Type it in the chat window, a name of an organization which is doing amazingly well. What's the first organization which comes to your mind? Amazon, Zoom, Google. If you do look at it, even Microsoft Teams, they're competing with Zoom for the online webinar presence. They're doing some amazing work. New features are being added as we speak. Even Zoom is doing the same thing. Google Hangouts. There are so many things which is happening. When you look at these organizations, they're always trying to do different things to create a collaborative space, because that's what they're fighting for. And to bring that kind of a change in, it becomes like a norm, getting a new feature out so that they can generate some value for the end users as well as the participants. They are looking at this. And the change, the way they are looking at change as well, the organizations, some of them we work with, it's positive and creating a collaborative way where people are coming together. And some of the things like a daily stand-up or a sprint planning way, people come together, create a collaborative space to look at how do we prioritize aggressive. There are hundreds of things we want to do, but can we do all of them? In reality, it's hard work. We can't do all of them. So how do we aggressively prioritize? How do we aggressively prioritize and assign some sort of a value? What's the cost of doing things? What's the cost of not doing things? And what's the value behind it? So you need to take all those things into consideration. It's not because for the sake of change, we can't just do it. And this is to bring a sustainable change. Think of it. We can't just run, make changes. We are human beings. As human beings, we need to be sustainable. It's like, can you feed a steak to a newborn baby? No, you can't. They will throw up. They will just throw up. So what are the things we can do to bring those changes in? And how do you plan it? And so it does take some work. So moving on, when we look at, there are some tips for leaders. I wish we can give you all the pro tips during this session. So there are some tips to the leaders which we have shortlisted. These are between me and Lindy. We have looked at it. And for a change to be acceptable from a leadership point of view or from an organization point of view, as leaders, you need to embrace it's okay. It's okay to change. Oh, we are changing too much. Change is never enough. And you need to be able to quantify everything you do. So by doing this, by bringing this change into the organization, what is the value? And how can we measure it? And the most important thing is focusing on delivering value in the organization. If you want to do a product, this is a value stream. Looking at how we deliver the product in the value stream, what are the areas we can reduce waste? What are the areas we can improve the quality? What are the areas we can see to deliver value to our customer quickly as well? So focusing on the value flow and engaging employees, your people who are actually working with your end customers, and they are working as a unit. It's not like, it's a customer's responsibility. Let me throw over the fence and my job's done. So where the employees are working with the customers, finding out what exactly the pain points are, what is really pissing them off. If they're able to remove those problems, what will happen? How do you manage those things? Bringing the worlds together and creating a collaborative space for them. And whenever we're delivering the products or working on a project or we're delivering some sort of a service, how do we deliver it incrementally? By doing X amount of work over 3 months' time, we can give the end product. How about we deliver some value incrementally? People ask me, Krishna, how can you deliver a value incrementally? How do we do things? Let me ask you a simple question. How many of you have seen a TV remote in your life? Type in the chat window, please. Yes or no? TV remote. Yeah, we have seen the TV remote. That's amazing. In your home, whatever TV remote you have, how many of you have used all the features? Somebody's even gone next level. But from mobile. So, how many of you use all the features on a TV remote? The answer is no. So to build a TV remote, I can take 3 months to 6 months. So if I ask my customer, what are the two most important features I can build to deliver to you? In your chat window, type in, what are the two most features for you, which is very, very important? Out of the entire TV remote, two features. Power, channel, on, off, change model, volume. Okay. By listening to the customers, you will know what are the two most important things are. Deliver some features to the customers. The customers started using them. You're listening from them. So these are the next priorities we have. The list of features we want to deliver. What is the next priority for you? So iteratively, you deliver some value to the customer, and you're taking that feedback from the customer, and you're learning from the feedback and asking the customer to prioritize what's important for you, and you're delivering the next set of features. I still remember the time I had a TV remote. It was nothing but a one big stick, and I was a lazy ass in my home around 6 or 7 years old with a stick trying to poke the TV channels. That was my TV remote. So I'm not asking you to go try to get a stick and poke your TV. Work with your customers and find out what kind of value would really help you to make you successful. That's simple. And for that kind of a change mindset, you need to work, engage your teams so they can look and feel they are very empathetic. They're understanding the customer's problem and you're able to bring the change in. That's hard work. As a leader, you are trying to bring those worlds together and you're sharing that responsibility together with your teams. Your customer is successful, your teams are successful. If your teams are successful, you'll be able to deliver more value. And if the customer wants more business and you're getting more business from the customer, better pay rise, maybe, job security. There are so many things which can go into play. It starts with some of the values from you as a leader. What are the things you need to do? Moving on. And there are some more pro tips as well. And helping As a leader, my job is to give direction, and I'm the person who will be telling people to do or not to do. Decentralize the power making decisions. There are some decisions you can be made, and there are some decisions. Ask yourself, if you are working as a leader, what are the decisions my team can make? If you're able to answer that, have an open discussion. Have an open discussion with the teams, because you do, as a leader, you do not need to be in every single team the team does. Just like your CEO in your organization, does the CEO need to be in every decision you make in the teams? No. So your department or the teams you're working, you know what is important. And so that you can keep the decision making decentralized. Sometimes decisions need to be made at the global level, not all of them, and see how you can work around and share the information freely as well, because the communication does not happen one way. It happens in both the ways. And working with the employees on the trenches when shit hits the roof. It's not like a boss in a cabin thinking that, oh, you go do the work. Oh, you go do the work. No, working with your team members, getting your hands dirty and seeing what are the things you can do. If your job is to, there's a great quote by Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi during independence, India's independence. Somebody asked him, a reporter asked him, would you become the Prime Minister of India if you've been given an opportunity? His response was, if my job is to sweep, I will sweep. If my job is to lead, I will lead. That's the beautiful thing about leadership. You do what the hell it takes to make your team successful. And even Robert Greenleaf in 1970s, he wrote a wonderful article on servant as a leader. Servant as a leader, putting the putting your employees first, putting your teams first, their needs first, and doing whatever it takes to helping them to be successful. That's your role. And building new leaders as well, building new leaders. How would you know, and how can you work with teams if they're going through some really interesting stuff and you're not even aware the pains they're going through? So one of the things in Agile, they talk about the Gemba walks, walking on the floor, working with your team members. Right now, because of COVID, we are working virtually. Just take a couple of minutes time and find out how your team members are doing. It doesn't take rocket science. And give people the practice in collaborative work. You can't say you're all empowered, make things happen. As a leader, you need to create an environment. You need to create the collaborative spaces and bring people together where they can work around different functions. And if you're able to help people to see why we are doing the change and working with them to discover the why together, that's all about it. It's not about, as a leader, I tell you, this is change, go do the change. Is not only explaining the why behind it, and some people, when they don't know the why, working with them to discovering the why. That's the key role of a leader. These are some of the tips we have for leadership. And there are other leaders, what other skills, what Lindy has explained as well. For you to be an Agile Lean practitioner, you need to understand what are the different kinds of practices out there. So you can, like the value stream mapping, looking from the Lean school of thought, or Six Sigma, it's about quality. You need to understand those practices. If you're a practitioner yourself, you will be able to teach your team members on how to use those some of this engineering practice out there to help you. If you're a subject matter expert, you will be able to mentor teams or mentor individuals or coach people to help them to find their own solutions. As a leader, you'll be playing multiple hats depending on the situation. But one thing which is constant in all these different roles you play, the intent is making your team successful. If your intent is, I'm going to be awesome, I'm going to tell them what it takes, you can be that awesome guy. Or you want to make it even more better, helping people to discover what it means to make high performance teams, and you are creating the environment to achieve it. That's the story on its own. That's the story on its own. So on that note, I want to move on to the next one. So this is a self-reflection for you. So again, famous leader, be the change you want to see in the world. If you want to bring change in your teams, you're talking about be the change. I have a question for all of you. We've been in this webinar for the last 45 minutes. So you have also learned about different types of leadership, different skills of leadership. So for 2021, what are the 3 leadership skills you have identified from this discussion which are important for you? Type it in the chat window, please. What are the 3 things? If you got one thing, that's also amazing. Embracing change. Yes, Harry. Do you mean what are the things you need more? Exactly. What are the 3 skills you need more than what you're not practicing? Be empathetic, empower team, decision making within the team. Work with the team to discover the why. I remember the name Iona. Amazing, amazing answers. Thank you very much for sharing all of them. Change my thought process first, then change the leadership code through process. Thank you very much, Suleika. So moving on, we will be moving on to the next section, which is nothing but the Q&A. So this section, I got 5 minutes, so I'll be taking the questions. If you want to ask me any Q&A, me and Lindy will be driving this. So in the Q&A section, type in your questions, please. I'll be more than happy to support you with Lindy. Yes, we do have a
Yes.
webinar recorded. We will be
Yeah.
sharing that. Kashika,
Yes.
please share all the documents and all the references. It will be shared as part of the pre-read material post webinar. So we'll be more than happy to share all the references and all the links. That's what we do. So Lindy, I have a question. So
Yes.
when you've been working with many strategic leaders and organizations, what are the common challenges you've seen leaders face?
I think for me, it's really about the virtual work. I mean, the people that we are working with traditionally were in a in an office environment, and now it is about really trusting people. So I would say trust. That comes up quite a lot. But I think teams that actually got to now work effectively remotely are actually more productive. So most leaders are actually seeing the benefit of that, and they're also seeing the benefit of giving that flexibility to their people. Like I said earlier as well, those are the most important things that's coming out of COVID, is that there's positive changes in the workplace as well, where people can spend more time with their families. They can spend more time with their children or with their spouses, because now they actually don't have 2 hours of travel time. So again, there's some challenges, but I think most of the challenges are it's almost like people have now overcome the worst challenges. And they've now found new ways of working, which they find is actually better than the previous way of working. So, yeah, so that's my take and feel. but we still have a long way to go. I think people think that, it's just going to end, but I think this is the new world, it's the new era of work, and we need to adapt, and we need to really look for these opportunities to see, how we can change ourselves to be able to um, to be more effective in this environment.
Thank you, Lindy, for saying that, which also reminds me of Patrick Lencioni's The Five Dysfunctions of Organizations and the themes as
Yes.
well. Trust comes in as the key element for any discussion, what I've seen. With COVID and people working virtually, any thoughts or comments around how to build that kind of a trust?
Okay, so Kashika has also said, how do we solve the trust issues between team members? And it's a great question because it's really about starting to be vulnerable with each other. And I don't know if you're a team leader, but perhaps you can just have, small meetings with the team so they can share a little bit about themselves, the struggles that they have, because distrust, unfortunately, has a major impact on organizations. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with The Speed of Trust. Perhaps you can also read that book from Stephen Covey, which talks about the importance of trust and ways of how you can build trust. There's certain behaviors. But Kashika, please get in touch with us, and we can have that discussion as well.
So when it comes to working, when you're working virtually, there's always things like how do you build trust over a period of time? Trust needs to be built. Then there are some different practices, exercises which you can ask and work with your teams as well. Some of the behaviors which we speak about, like openness, trust, courage, respect, commitment, these are five behaviors which are very, very important for all the teams. And a simple a team discussion would be amazing, like a retrospective meeting. These are the five pillars we have in our organization, in our teams. What are the things we need to do to improve the trust? And opening that kind of a discussion where people are adding their comments in, people are able to come up with those ideas. So there are some things you can do as a leader. There are other things you must and should do to create that environment where people don't get prosecuted for them trying to do an experiment. If an experiment fails, he's a great guy. If an experiment fails, bad person. So experiment by definition, it's a hypothesis. We want to find out what are the conditions we're going to try, what are the variables you need to look out for. You don't know what you don't know. You're trying it. Doesn't mean that if you think there's the risk is high, manage it. Manage it in a controlled environment. So, because sometimes, do we need to test it in production? No. Can we test it in a test environment and ensure that these features or functions are working properly? You can do it. So there are areas which we need to work on, and that trust topic, I don't think we can solve it straight away. I would recommend you to come and join us in some of the sessions, what we are doing. That will be amazing. So, anonymous attendee, how important is it for leaders to know the details of what the entire team does and what's the right mix balance? Is it for the impactful leadership style? So, there are few questions in there. How important is for the leaders to know the details? I can't answer for all the leaders. What I can answer is you need to be aware. As a leader, I need to be aware what is the intent, what the team are delivering. We know as a leader, you set the vision. You set the vision. And how to achieve that vision, that's the magic. That's what teams do. So you need to create the environment, work with the teams to achieve that. And what is the right mix balance for an impactful leadership style? Right mix, I don't have a perfect formula. For example, let's say we are all working in one team. There's a fire alarm which kicked off straight away. Do you think this webinar or this session is going to happen? I will say, let's call it off. We'll catch up later. Am I being a leader? Because I'm telling fire alarm is happening. Let's catch up next time. So sometimes leaders need to play multiple roles depending on the situation. Sometimes you can be quite instructive where you're teaching people. This is not the way you do it. This is the way you do it. Sometimes you'll be mentoring. Okay, they have already done the some work. So what are the other areas you can improve it? Sometimes you might be coaching, you're asking powerful questions and helping them to come up with their own answers. So, what is the right mix? Depending on the team maturity, your skills will change. If you remember the Tuckman stages of team development: forming, storming, norming, performing, adjourning. So, as a leader, you might be playing multiple roles in that Tuckman stages as well. So, remember that. So, there is a mix. I can't give you a perfect formula for it. But what I can give you is the awareness for you to play what are the different roles you need to do. And that's the call you need to make. From a client's perspective, what is the expectations during COVID in leadership style? COVID, no COVID, as a client, I want my vendor to support me, make me successful, and whatever money I've invested, make me 10 times more. Simple rules. As a client, I want to be successful. Do whatever it takes to make me successful. So it's perspective. At the end of the day, our client is spending money. So they want some value from it. So out of the most important, most difficult things when leaders do give bad news to the employees, how do leaders handle it? So be honest. If the house is on fire, it is on fire. If there is a threat we're going to see in 6 months' time, openly talk about it. Why do you want to hide? This is the trust which we are talking about. So, how do we work with these issues? How do we, if we are able to provide that kind of a visibility to your organization, that will be amazing. Doesn't mean that all the data needs to be passed on to to all the team members as well. What is the right amount of information at the right time? For that, you need to work with your additional leaders and see what is the right thing to do. So I wish I have a lot of time to give you all the information. So everyone in this room are working either at the team level or at the business unit or at the enterprise level. There are different kinds of leadership styles and skills you need to play for the different roles. For me, when I call an agile coach or a leader, it doesn't make a difference. What are the skills what agile coaches have? I expect the leaders to have the same things. Actually, I teach the same skills for executives and various other leaders in the organization, even if it's an oil and gas industry or if it's an IT industry. It doesn't matter. Those skills are important. Those are important skills.